What is the best thing you did financially in your life? Be sure to note if there is a life lesson hidden within your answer. I started freelancing as a side gig. Used the money for a down payment on a house in 2010. I sold during a real estate boom and moved to another city where I bought an expensive house with the proceeds. Real estate boom happened here, and I sold for a huge profit. Now I'm in a house I wouldn't afford if not for a couple of home sales started by working a couple extra hours per day. I guess it was still mostly luck though. Start early. I was married at 23, started building my house at 26. Spent nights and weekends working on that for more than a year until it was just barely suitable to live in. Been working on it ever since, adding a shed, a porch, an addition, and a large garage. It's probably worth 7x what my original mortgage was. Ran my own business from my mid-20s till present. Finished having kids before I was 30. My point being that when you are young you have a lot more energy to go to school, work on a house, and raise a family. The effort you put in when you are young and full of energy will pay dividends your whole life and will serve you well when you are older and have less energy. I'm mid to late 50s now with no debt at all, not worried about retirement, kids out of the house and doing well on their own. You're always spending either money or time. When you are young, you have more time than money, but if you spend the time then, you are more likely to have the money when you are older and have less time. By age 35, I had been renting apartments/houses for almost half my life, and I got tired of it. I knew that house payments were often cheaper than rent, but in order to buy, you had to have good credit, a down payment, and an affordable deal. I needed a down payment, and all I had in savings was money tied up in a retirement plan. Against my father's advice, I cashed out enough of my retirement for a down payment on an inexpensive but cool, to me, old house in the downtown area of my city. It turned out great. I met the woman I married while in that house. It was our baby's first home. We moved, but kept the house as a rental. It's long paid off, and we still have it almost 30 years later. If you are young, your most valuable financial resource is time. Compound interest is your friend. Dividend reinvestment is your friend. Open a Fidelity or Vanguard account. Open a Roth IRA. Put the maximum into your IRA every year. Buy a broad-based mutual fund and send it up for dividend reinvestment. Fidelity FXAIX or Vanguard VTI or VOO are great funds. Don't screw around with stocks, just get one of those aforementioned ETFs/funds. And buy and hold and be patient, and one day you will have loads of money. And, after you fund your IRA, buy VTI or VOO of FXAIX or a similar fund. Every paycheck, put some money into those funds because you spend money of weed or shoes or video games. Do that for a long time and you will be able to retire early. And, I am an old person and regret not having started doing this earlier in my life. As it is, I started my serious investing and saving in my 30s and only in the last year broke the 1 million mark. The day we were married I was broke. Our net worth was exactly what we received in wedding gifts. Under $1,000. Both working and living on one income. I worked construction full-time and on weekends and evenings were spent as on-call handyman in exchange for rent and utilities. After 3 years we could put down 1/3 to buy a duplex. The rent we collected there covered the mortgage, anything extra went to pay it off, which took 6 years. I figure for the first decade we basically lived for nothing while building equity. Got a heck of a start from this approach. Buy a house with a mortgage and not attempt to pay it off early. Seriously, people who think they're getting ahead by paying off early a mortgage with an interest rate below the rate of inflation don't understand how mortgages work. The first problem is thinking of it as debt. It's not. As long as you're not foolish enough to sell after the market crashes and you have negative equity, the loan is secured by the value of the house. By the time you sell it, your gains in equity should far outweigh everything else. Paying extra on a loan with valuable today money when the bank is perfectly willing to accept the same amount of inflation devalued future money 30 years from now isn't a good plan. When I retired, I sold my crappy house in a high COL area for more than twice what I paid for it, paid off the $300,000 remaining on the mortgage, and bought a house twice the size in a rural area for cash with the rest. Instead of pumping my spare cash into early loan repayment, which would have netted me like $3,000 more after mortgage payoff, I dumped it into my retirement investment accounts where it basically doubled in value. That's a far better return on investment than saving a couple $100 a year in interest by overpaying the mortgage. Live within my means. After paying bills, 30% goes into cash savings. 30% goes into real estate, or a fund for real estate. 30% goes back into the business. If you don't have a business, add it to the real estate fund. 10% giveaway. Philanthropy has so many benefits, particularly if you do it regularly. It warms your heart. It lets people know what kind of person you are. Never let your loan to capital value get much above 30%. After you get $1 million, those figures aren't as static. Keeping that much in cash may not be the best business solution. We still keep to the 30% loan to capital ratio, even lower as we age. Someone sat me down in my early 20s and gave me that advice. It has made a huge difference for my husband and myself. When you get a raise or a higher paying job, do not spend the extra money without long and hard thought. Move up a little, but not as much as your new salary would allow. Live below your means and save your money. If you practice this, you'd be amazed how quickly your savings adds up. And it's never too late to start saving. If you couldn't save right when you began working, just start whenever you can. You are worth saving for. Put money in a 401k at my employer, always at least enough dollar to get company match, and left it alone no matter what the markets were doing. Retired at 56, and I think this approach is the biggest reason why it was feasible to do so. I started saving for retirement when I got my first job. I never stopped contributing to it. Many times I did without. I didn't panic either. In 2000, 2007, and 2020, when the market corrected itself, I stayed in all my stock investments. In fact, I increased my contribution. While others panicked and sold, I stayed put and watched the market rebound as it always does. Many retirements were delayed because of this. Not me. This rigged system is not meant for the little guy like you and me. You can't work hard. You have to work smart. In my 20s, I read a book called Your Money or Your Life. TLDR, the less money you need to live, the sooner you can save it up and be free. I retired in my early 40s. Educate yourself with a skill that is job demand. Fluffy degrees won't make you a lot of money and wasting time, and sometimes, getting into debt for those degrees will be bad news. You won't make enough to pay them off. That being said, take a look over the personal finance subreddit to see sad stories about people who rack up student debt and credit card debt without thinking ahead. I worked for the state and stuck around long enough for the lifetime pension and free health insurance. I also took out supplemental retirement accounts. Knowing the predisposition to cancer in my husband's family, I took out supplemental health insurance and made back all those premiums and then some. I never made a minimum payment on anything, not my house, a car, student loans, or credit cards. I took a second job if that was what I had to do. Always make sure that anything over the minimum goes to the principal, then pay as much as you can. Minimum payments just mean you'll keep paying and paying without getting anywhere. From a purely financial perspective, immediately grind, save, and not spend money instead of enjoying my 20s. I was the guy who didn't backpack through Europe. Hell, I didn't even take vacations. Always had 10-plus-year-old boring but solid cars like Buick Regals, even though I could technically afford more. Bought the tiny house I could afford earlier than the huge house I wanted that I couldn't really afford. Just a lot of stuff like that. I sort of made a decision early on that there were two types of people, those who enjoyed their 20s and 30s and lived their best lives, but then had to grind longer and harder in their 40s and on, and those who deferred early fun. It's a risk. You don't know how long you will live. You don't know how your health will hold out. But from a purely financial perspective, putting vacation and restaurant money into IRAs and brokerage accounts when I was 22 is paid off. Married my wife. Was a pretty good hacker in my day. Had my own software company and could crank code like I was on crank, which I was not. But I suck at financial management and investing. My wife is a member of the Church of Buffet, i.e. pick good stocks, then buy and hold, forever. The woman has ice water in her veins during really bad market conditions, whereas I would fold like a little baby. Without her, I would have been living in a box under a bridge. Graphic designer here. I was working full-time and a friend who worked on startups asked me to do a freelance job for him. I really wasn't supposed to be doing outside income generating work. I said sure, but he could pay me in stock instead of cash. So he gave me 5,000 options. Time went on and the company didn't really go anywhere for years, and I sort of wrote it off as me helping out a friend. Then out of the blue the company sold and everyone cashed out. I made about $40,000 and it paid off all my remaining student loans. No life lesson other than you don't get lucky if you don't give yourself the chance to be lucky. My highest earning years were about 1985 to 2005. In my world, one had to keep up. I don't think there's as much pressure these days to do so, and that's good. Set your own goals, follow your own path, and don't give a rat's ass what anyone else is doing. Budget, save, and spend only on what you truly need or love. Keep your family warm and safe, and live in an outdated home and drive an old car if that will help take you where you want to be. In the end, neither your house, nor your car, nor your clothes, nor what restaurants you ate at matter, and no one cares. The only consideration ultimately is looking out for your own future. I bought a small farmhouse on 4 acres in 2009 from my late sister's estate in a very expensive neighborhood for its then very low assessed tax price of just shy of $1 million. Today, vacant land where I live is selling for $1 million to $1.5 million an acre, and my house alone is worth $2 million plus. The best RE lawyer in town says I can subdivide the property not including my house and yard and build 3 additional houses. The timing was right. RE in 2009 had tanked. I needed a place to live and I just got lucky. Married the right woman, eventually. The first wife never worked. Had no problem with her being a stay-at-home mom, but before we had kids, for years, and after they were in school, she didn't work. Just laid in the backyard getting a tan. And don't tell me she was taking care of the house, etc. I did all the cooking, shopping, etc. We lived on one income for 23 years. I own my own business, so we had very low medical insurance, had to pay for pretty much everything myself. When we split up, we had nothing. Sold our house and paid back taxes. Met a wonderful woman, now my wife, who is a professional in the medical insurance field. We set financial goals, and here we are 24 years later. Have a $1 million, a house that's paid for, don't owe anyone any money, and retired. Happy as can be. I bought Apple stock early. I've saved religiously and carry no debt other than a mortgage. Pay yourself first. Always put the first 10% or more of your take-home pay in savings or investments. Keep enough liquid to handle any unforeseen problems, and you'll never need a credit card. Understand CDs and high-yield savings and how compounding works to your advantage. Thanks for watching and being on the road to Reddit Millionaire with us. So, have you done any financial decisions in your life that you are proud of, or are you planning to do so? Let us know. Until next one.